Have you ever sat down to do something important, opened your computer, and somehow, 20 minutes later, found yourself scrolling through your phone? You knew exactly what you were supposed to do. You knew the deadline was getting closer, and yet you still said, I'll do it later. But what if I told you that this may have very little to do with being lazy? Because procrastination is not always about avoiding the work. Sometimes you are avoiding the feeling that comes with the work, and that changes everything. Fear of failure can make you avoid starting. Perfectionism can make you wait for the perfect moment. Overthinking can keep you trapped in endless preparation. And sometimes your brain simply chooses a small reward now over a bigger reward later. But here is where it gets interesting. These are not the same kind of procrastination. There are different psychological patterns hiding behind the same behavior. And the first one may be the most surprising of all. The person who procrastinates because they want everything to be perfect. The first type is the perfectionist. You have an important task to finish. You know exactly what needs to be done. But instead of starting, you think about how to do it perfectly. You want the perfect idea, the perfect plan, the perfect words. And you tell yourself, I'll start when I'm ready. But that perfect moment never seems to arrive. Why? Because when the standard is extremely high, starting can feel risky. The moment you begin, you create the possibility of making a mistake. So your brain chooses something that feels safer, waiting. The strange thing is, perfectionists often procrastinate not because they care too little, but because they care too much about the result. And this leads to something even deeper. Because what happens when the problem is not making something perfect, but the fear of what might happen if you fail? That brings us to the second type, the avoider. Unlike the perfectionist, you may not be thinking about making everything perfect. You simply do not want to face the feeling that comes with the task. Maybe it makes you anxious. Maybe you are afraid of failing. Maybe you are afraid someone will judge your work. Or maybe the task simply feels overwhelming. So you do something else. You check your phone, you watch a video, you clean your room. You suddenly find 10 other things that need to be done. And for a moment, you feel better. That moment of relief is important because your brain has just learned something. Avoiding the task makes the uncomfortable feeling disappear. And when the brain discovers a behavior that provides immediate relief, it has a reason to repeat it. But there is another type of procrastinator who does something even more confusing. They do not avoid the task at all. They think about it, they analyze it, they plan it over and over again. And that is where the overthinker enters the story. The third type is the overthinker. You do not avoid the task, you think about it. You think about where to start, what strategy to use, what could go wrong, and whether there might be a better way. You research, you compare, you plan, then you plan the plan. And somehow, hours have passed, but the task itself has barely moved. The strange part is that overthinking can feel like productivity. Your brain is busy solving imaginary problems before you have even taken the first real step. You tell yourself, I just need to understand this a little better before I begin. But there is always one more thing to figure out. And this reveals something important about procrastination. Sometimes, thinking is not preparation. It is avoidance disguised as preparation. But there is another problem. What happens when you finally stop thinking and actually begin, only to have your attention pulled away every few minutes? That brings us to the fourth type, the distracted. You finally sit down, you open the document, you are ready to work. Then your phone lights up. One notification, one message, one short video. You tell yourself, I'll just check it for a second. And that second becomes 10 minutes. Then you return to your work, but something has changed. Your attention is no longer fully there. You check another notification, open another tab. Maybe you suddenly remember something else you need to search for. Modern technology makes this especially difficult because digital platforms are designed around rapid, unpredictable rewards. Your brain does not have to wait very long to discover something new. Meanwhile, meaningful work often demands concentration before it gives you anything back. So the distraction is not simply competing with your time, it is competing with your brain's reward system. But what if you are not distracted by your phone at all? What if the distraction is happening entirely inside your own imagination? Because the next type can spend hours dreaming about the future while doing almost nothing to create it. The fifth type is the dreamer. You have a big goal. You can already imagine what your life will look like when you achieve it. You picture the finished project, the success, the freedom, the person you could become. And for a moment, simply imagining that future can feel incredibly satisfying. But then comes the difficult part, turning that exciting vision into hundreds of small, repetitive actions. Writing one page, making one phone call, practicing one skill, showing up again tomorrow. The problem is that the brain can become attracted to the idea of progress without actually making progress. You love the destination, but keep avoiding the road. And there is something even more deceptive than dreaming about success: being busy while secretly avoiding the work that matters most. That is the sixth type, the busy one. You are always doing something: answering emails, organizing files, cleaning your workspace, checking messages, making lists, planning your next day. By the end of the day, you are exhausted. So you think, I was busy all day. I must have accomplished a lot. But then you look at the one thing that truly mattered and realize you never touched it. This is sometimes called productive procrastination. It is dangerous because it does not look like procrastination. You are not lying on the couch doing nothing. You are working. You are simply choosing tasks that feel easier, safer, or more comfortable. Why? Because completing small tasks gives you a quick sense of progress. The important task may still feel uncertain, so your brain chooses the easy win. But what happens when even the easy choices become difficult? Because you have too many options, that leads to the next type, the indecisive. The seventh type is the indecisive. You finally sit down to start, but suddenly there are too many ways to begin. Which option is better? Which strategy should you choose? What if you make the wrong decision? So you research a little more. You compare another option, you watch another video, and then you find another possibility. The more choices you have, the harder it becomes to commit to one. Because choosing means accepting that you might be wrong. So instead of making a decision, you keep the decision open. It feels productive because you are still gathering information. But eventually, research becomes another form of procrastination. And then something interesting happens. Some people do not need more choices to finally act. They need something much stronger: pressure. And that leads us to the eighth type, the thrill seeker. You have known about the deadline for days, maybe even weeks, but somehow nothing happens. Then suddenly, the deadline is tomorrow, and everything changes. Your focus becomes sharper, your energy rises. You stop checking your phone, you work faster, and somehow you finish. You might even think, I actually work better under pressure. But is that really true? Or have you simply trained your brain to wait for urgency before taking action? When the deadline gets close, the consequences become immediate. There is no longer a distant reward. There is a clear threat of losing something now. That urgency can make the task feel much more important. But this creates a dangerous cycle: delay, pressure, action, relief. And because you survived the deadline once, your brain may remember that you eventually got it done. So next time, you wait again. But what if the pressure is not created by the deadline? What if it comes from something deeper? Your need to resist being told what to do. That brings us to the ninth type. The ninth type is the rebel. You know you should do the task. You even know it is important. But the moment you tell yourself, I have to do this, something inside you pushes back. Suddenly, you do not want to do it anymore. This can be related to something psychologists call psychological reactance, the tendency to resist when we feel our freedom or control is being restricted. And the strange part is, sometimes nobody is forcing you. You are forcing yourself. You create the rule, you create the deadline, and then another part of your mind rebels against it. So procrastination becomes more than avoiding work. It becomes a quiet way of saying, I want to be in control. But there is still one final type, a type that does not necessarily fear the task and does not necessarily hate it. They simply believe there will always be enough time, until suddenly there isn't. The 10th type is the last minute one. You know the deadline is coming, you have plenty of time. So you wait, then you wait a little longer, until the deadline is no longer tomorrow, but tonight. Suddenly, everything changes. Your attention becomes sharper, your urgency rises, and you finally start. You finish the task and think, see, I knew I could do it. And that is exactly what makes this pattern so powerful, because your brain remembers the ending. You finished, you survived, you got through it. So the next time you have a deadline, there is no strong reason to change your behavior. The cycle repeats: delay to pressure to action to relief. But now we have seen all 10 types, and there is one question that connects every single one of them. If procrastination can look so different from person to person, what is the one thing happening underneath all of them? And that may be the most important part of the entire story. So, after seeing all 10 types, you might be wondering, which one are you? Maybe you are the perfectionist who is afraid of getting it wrong. Maybe you are the avoider who does not want to face an uncomfortable feeling. Maybe you overthink until planning becomes a substitute for action. Or perhaps you are the person who stays busy, waits for pressure, or simply gets distracted by the next notification. They may look completely different on the surface, but underneath, they share something important. Procrastination is often less about time and more about emotion. We delay because the present moment feels uncomfortable, while the consequences of waiting still feel far away. So the next time you catch yourself saying, I'll do it later, pause for a second. Do not immediately ask, why am I so lazy? Ask something more useful. What feeling am I trying to avoid right now? Because sometimes the thing you are procrastinating on is not the task itself, it is the feeling waiting behind it. And once you understand that feeling, you may finally understand why your brain keeps telling you later.